Drew, can you break down a little bit? I've seen you do it online, but Trump, I'm not, well, I keep saying Trump, again, all the same damn thing. Pence tried to bring up Kamala Harris's record, saying that she locked up all these black people, right? And so we know we have a predominantly black audience, and I've had folks call in and say this. But can you just break down why that was a stone cold lie talking point from Mike Pence?
Well, absolutely. So when you say she locked up a bunch of black people, the first thing you got to think about is, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and just assume you're not talking about murderers, rapists, women beaters, child molesters. So I'm just going to assume you're talking about that. So we're just going to stick to the low-level drug offenses because we just go off of that assumption there. Once you actually look at Kamala Harris's record, and the thing about it is when you tell somebody that, oh, she locked up all these black people, the first question is, okay, well, how many? What's the actual number? There was a meme going around that said she broke the state record for incarceration of black males, and people were running with this and believing it. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the record? Like, does anybody know? What's the next 5 people if they're keeping track of that? So the thing is, though, when you actually look at the history of it, so I went back to her days as Attorney General. I said, okay, for marijuana incarcerations, I'm assuming nobody's talking about meth and crack. So we're just going to talk about marijuana because that's the popular thing. Okay. Looked it up. There was a claim made by Tulsi Gabbard in one of the primary debates where she said that she incarcerated 1,500 people on marijuana charges as Attorney General. The problem with that is the Attorney General does not prosecute marijuana cases. Like I mentioned in my video, that's like the CEO of Target coming down and doing price check on scented candles in aisle 4. Like, you're not going to see that happen. Like, you're not going to see the vice president or the board of trustees ring you up on Register 5. It ain't going to happen. So that's number one. Lower level prosecutors, the DAs handle those. Lower level prosecutors and even state attorneys if the charges are that much. The other thing that I left out of my video is that because of historic lack of resources and being locked out of certain economic access, black men, we don't even have the ability to create crimes on the level enough on a consistent enough basis for the attorney generals to even be considered or be looking at, especially not the second largest Department of Justice in the United States of America. We just don't have the resources to consistently create crime on that level. The AGs are looking at, when Kamala Harris was AG, she was looking at the housing crisis as far as the banks and how they had manipulated people and gotten over on folks who lost their homes. She was looking at predatory colleges. These are billion-dollar institutions. We don't have the resources to even commit crime on that level. And so I said, all right, so when you actually look at the actual numbers, the actual number of people who were incarcerated for marijuana is under her time as AG, even though we've already established she had nothing to do with that. But in her first year, it was about a little over 800 folks that were actually incarcerated. This is a state of 40 million people with approximately 1 million arrests a year. So if I break that down and say over the course of, let's say, I'll just say 5 years of her, that's 5 million arrests, 800 people out of 5 million total. So the other thing is the last year of her being in as Attorney General, that number had plummeted. As a matter of fact, you look at the actual chart of marijuana convictions and prosecutions or actual incarceration, it's a sharp drop-off. It looks like if you've ever been to a theme park, that first drop on the roller coaster, it's ridiculous. So that's number one. So then you look at, okay, well, maybe when she had direct control. So I'm trying to prove people right when I hear this. I went to her time as district attorney. Well, as district attorney, there was this little thing that she had called Back on Track that she had created. So a wonderful program, reentry program, restorative justice is what I call it, where you have the ability to, or the actual program takes first-time, low-level, nonviolent drug sales offenders, and instead of incarcerating them or giving them a record, it actually puts them in a workshop environment where they are able to learn helpful skills. We're talking about job readiness skills. We're talking about attaining their GEDs, parental skills as well, where they are able to get their credit repaired as well. Also, they are introduced and actually given really the hookup to employers and employers, and Kamala Harris herself was actually going through a personal Rolodex, calling people up and saying, yo, I got somebody here, great person, you got a position for them, literally hooking folk up with jobs, instead of sending them off to jail or giving them a record and something, a felony conviction is going to follow them for the rest of their life. at the completion of Back on Track program, not only were the charges thrown out, okay, but the entire thing was sealed up as if it never happened. And these people, now you have folk who may have been caught with a gram or two of crack cocaine, even in some cases, who were able to have that erasing the record sealed up, and then they're able to go ahead and live wonderful, productive lives without that cloud hanging over them with your felony conviction, because we understand how that affects your ability to be employed. But Back on Track is one thing, and when you even look at the numbers, it took the recidivism rate of people who participated in that from 54% to 10%. That's a 44% drop in recidivism or reoffending rate. So again, now her mentality, if someone who creates a program like that or is involved in something like that as far as the creation and implementation of a program like that, doesn't seem like somebody who's locking folk up for weed left and right. So I looked again, you look at the actual policy in the district attorney's office that she held and say, okay, outside of Back on Track, how are you handling drug case, marijuana sales or marijuana possession charges? Well, when you look at the narcotics division, their actual policy was that nobody, absolutely nobody, who is charged and convicted with a simple possession of marijuana was allowed to see incarceration. You just were not allowed to do that. Even folks who had more serious charges were actually pleaded down to less serious ones. There are people who actually went in there with felony marijuana sales charges and got them pleaded down in misdemeanors. This was her idea of thinking. If you have a simple possession, you can't get incarcerated. What actually happened was that we actually look at the prosecutors in that division. They even took it upon themselves to say, you know what? And this is according to Nikki Solis, who's the public defender in San Francisco at the time, was that it wasn't even showing up in the docket. They weren't even prosecuting it. They just wouldn't. They wouldn't even mention it. And so you go in there prepare for one thing. You look at the docket and it's like, hold on, what? And now you got to sit there and adjust it because they're not even charging that. This is what's happening in Kamala Harris's district attorney's office. And so me trying to prove everybody, not prove you right, but let me just see what the actual facts were. This is actually what was going on. So when you say that she was locking up folk for locking up black people left and right, the numbers don't support it. There is zero proof that it was taking place. And her actual regard, and even her actual philosophy was not about being tough on crime. Her idea was being smart on crime and understanding that, incarcerating people for the lowest things, all it does is perpetuate the issue. Her issue was not punishing people through the carceral system. Her entire mentality is about public safety. And that's actually what she's done philosophy-wise, and it's been consistent, incredibly consistent. Even when you go to people who had these massive marijuana charges, where it was enough for you to even get locked up for into the state pen, or is a state pen or state prison rather. The previous district attorney, Terrence Hallinan, they call him Knockout. He's the one that gets credit, especially from the white left, of being the true progressive prosecutor. However, in his term as AG, he sent 135 people to state prison when marijuana was the most serious offense. Kamala Harris, in that same amount of time, sent 45. How do you have such a sharp drop-off that quickly in the same amount of time if somebody is locking folk up? So, again, people say, oh, she locked folk up. However, the numbers just ain't there. It's not there.
And there's that. There's that.